Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Check 1, 2, 3, 4. My niece is like, I think she got more exercise here than if we'd gone to the park. She had a ball.
Right. Margaret.
Everything's okay. Okay. Well, this is the second meeting of our discussion on the CDO, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Nestor-Jelen, if you'd kindly call the roll.
Sure. Margaret Clements.
Here.
Tron Enright Randolph. Scott Ferris.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Edward Ullman. Dee Owens.
Here.
Jerry Pittsford.
Here.
Julie Thomas.
Here.
And then we have additional member from the Board of Commissioners, Penny Githens.
I'm here.
Okay, so we do have 6 Plan Commission members in person and 5 Plan Commission members in person, 1 online, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, and I'd just like to repeat for the public that's attending remotely and here in person in the room that we are not taking comments from the public. This is our administrative meeting to get through the hard work that the staff and the public have done in giving us comments. We're reviewing the comments and we're going over them one by one. And we're here today almost at the end of individual property owner comments, but we have some now grouped by neighborhood. And we have that business to finish up, and we're just conducting our business in the sunlight. So
will there be a point where public comment can be taken?
no, not at this meeting. This is solely,
Not this meeting. At a time frame?
I'm sorry, you're not recognized because, but I will say that, will there be public comment at the commissioners meeting when you entertain the adoption of the CDO?
We haven't set a calendar yet.
Yes. So we have no additional plans to take public comment because we've been taking public comment for 4 or more years.
I'm asking on an individual property basis because the meetings have been in the administration, and the only
I'm sorry. So if I might.
Yes, please.
So there have been a number of opportunities to speak, not just for 3 minutes, but we've taken comment. But if you have specific properties you want to make a comment on, what I would recommend is you send an email to the commissioners because the public comment cutoff for the Plan Commission on October 6th. The next round of public comment goes to the commissioners. So if you have a comment about property, send it to us before we hear it. And that would be a good way to do it, okay?
we've emailed everything to the Plan Commission already.
Well, we have that. And in fact, we're about ready to discuss Clear Creek, the Clear Creek area, and we have the comments that have come in from Clear Creek. Now, we do have a lot of business to get through, Mr. Cassidy, and I'm really sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but we do need to conduct our business, and this is not an opportunity for comment. Okay.
Madam Vice President, I'm not sure if we did roll call, but I was just wanting to be recognized that I'm in attendance.
Yes. Please let the record reflect that Mr. Enright Randolph is in attendance.
I cannot tell, but it appears Jeff's got better eyesight than I do, that Lee Jones may be present online. Thank you.
Elijah, do you have any way that you could increase the font on the closed captioning on the screen that is down here on the floor? Can you do that magic?
Okay. So we will continue to review these items line by line. However, let it be noted that the next few public comments are organized by neighborhoods and areas. For example, the next items and properties on our agenda for review involve multiple properties in the Clear Creek area. And I want to turn it over now to Ms. Nestor-Jelen for just an introduction of this grouping, and so that we can review these and vote on these changes as a committee.
Yes, since this is a similar work session set up to the meeting that we had on Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock. I'm going to turn it over to Tammy to continue on with the individual zoning map changes. So we're, I think, like you mentioned, at the Clear Creek area. And then we will, at some point, maybe during this meeting, if we switch over to the third item in the packet, which is the text changes, I would suggest maybe we could do a quick recess and we'll switch around and I'll be taking that forward.
Okay,
So,
great. Thank you.
Okay, so the next properties that we're going to speak on are the Clear Creek properties. These are kind of at the intersection of that road and South Rogers Street. It was approximately 69 properties that were submitted by Randy Cassidy, Tammy Cassidy, and Bruce Tabor. Some of these properties we have already heard at the Plan Commission meeting back in February, and a few of these properties were actually rezoned to the RNH zoning. Most of these properties are between the acreage of 0.15 to 1.5 acres. There are a few, however, that are larger, ranging from like 3.5 acres up to 16 acres. So that is something to consider if the properties want to be converted to, and let me pull up the zoning for these properties. So what I have on here right now, that's the comprehensive plan, which has a lot of mixed residential use and also conservation. We do have a considerable amount of floodplain and floodway within this area. It's in a critical watershed, and let's see. Let me grab one parcel number here. Right, so the zoning in this area ranges from the CD zoning, community, was it rural development? Down here we have an IP for the cemetery and some res zoning. So, and we have changed a few. These couple of properties are the RNH zoning. We did have one that got converted to the res zoning earlier through the administrative process back in February. So one thing I did want to share is that a lot of these properties do have access to sewer. Here's the intersection of South Rogers and that road. This is the SOMO development. And the green indicates the sewer lines that are currently in. There's one line that's going to be running right through here along South Rogers Street. Typically in the RNH zone, those are where we see it in Steinsville, Harrodsburg, and Smithville. These are areas that kind of do have already access to sewer. So it allows for maybe a little more of an intensification because you can do more like a work-live type of use on a property and have some limited commercial mixed in with the residential in these areas. And allow some of that intensification is because maybe there might be access to the sewer and we don't have to rely on septic systems. So
I'll note just for the record, Smithville does not have sewer, but it was built out over time and they just have relatively smaller lots. So part of the RNH is first recognizing most of those designated communities that have been picked up in the comprehensive plans, but then also recognizing the legal existing nature of the lot sizes that are out there, which can be very small, such as 0.14 acres.
So is there any way we can group these together and decide as a group, or do we need to do them individually?
I mean, we kind of did not individually take it out. I do have in the spreadsheet before you identified in the staff notes some of the larger parcels that were more than 1.5 acres. So every other one that has a blank is between 0.15 and 1.5 acres.
Can you tell us which ones are 1 acre and above currently?
Got everything marked on here, it looks like above 1.5, but
Right.
not above 1.
That's right. So, but between 0.15
So
to
which
1.
ones were you interested in? Because I think I can select them below. You were wanting to know what's over an acre?
1 acre or above, so, or what is below 1 acre currently?
Either or.
Either one, it's the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if it'll let me do it. Like, Beacon is kind of new to us, and so we're getting used to it.
Yes, it's okay.
It doesn't want me to do it. Give me just a moment, and I can sort. No, we cannot.
Maybe Jackie can answer this question for me while she's doing that. It's just a general question. How is this Clear Creek area, how was it determined? Is it just based on the intersections of certain roadways to certain roadways? Is there something else that was added into the mix?
Yes, good question. So this was a handout that was received during the September 24th hearing, the historic Clear Creek neighborhood handout that you received. So we took that in person with Mr. Cassidy. We helped create the map based on that historic allocation of those addresses. So I believe it was pared down a little bit. It did include the Clear Creek Elementary, and we took that off. But it is inclusive in that document. Everything that's listed on the screen is in that document as well, which I can put on the screen as well.
Okay. Maybe this is a good question for Drew. Do you see this whole area that's outlined in this list as historic related? I know it's another issue we're going to be talking about, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, so looking at the handout that Mr. Cassidy provided, there certainly appears to be several structures in the area that are listed as contributing based on the information. I don't know the date of that survey. It looks like it might be from the 1989 interim report. We will also be talking with the Historic Preservation Board regarding this area to see what their thoughts are with respect to historic nature.
Okay, so potential for doing an overlay in this area.
There's potential for any property to be designated as the HP overlay if it meets any of the criteria in Chapter 810-3, but I would defer to the HP board's expertise in that matter.
Right, but also potential for creating a historic area as well, not just a single, not property by property, but there's a potential for some of these buildings to be part of a larger historic area.
So within Chapter 810, under the planning ordinance, we have the ability to provide an HP overlay, or historic preservation overlay, and that is based on each property's individual property parcel. There are some capacity to designate individual structures within that overlay, but it's not so much a district designation like you would see with Maple Grove Road. That's more of a state or federal designation or recognition of those areas.
Okay, thank you. That's the word I was looking for, was district. Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I was able to pull up the properties that are under 1 acre within this area.
Are they the ones outlined in yellow?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And how many did that remove from the lists on page 12 and 13 that are currently blank?
47. So this is 47 that are between 0 and 1 acres.
And how many would that then be?
Additional.
It's 22, because
22.
it was submitted 69 records, so 69 minus 47 is 22.
I would say that for me, some of these parcels do sort of fall outside of what I would consider to be, you know, an RNH designation. But my sense of it is I would really be happy to apply the RNH to any of these lots on this list, but if they're over 1.5 acres, I would say maybe conservation or R1 or something like that would be appropriate. That's just my take on it.
Not 1 acre. Yeah, but she's saying 1.5 acres. That excludes 22 records.
4, 5, so there's 5 that are over 1.5 acres.
There are 5 that are over 1.5 acres, and then that would mean 17 that are over 1 acre.
But you couldn't do anything if it's R1, if you have 1.5 acres and it's R1, you can't subdivide it. So there's no danger there. But I don't know if it's conservation that's more appropriate or what, but I'm just thinking out loud here that I would be very happy to apply the RNH to these lots that are outlined here, but the ones that are larger, meaning 1.5 or larger, I would say they need some other designation, and I don't know what that is.
Oh, I see. So the RNH applies, but whether or not they're able to build on smaller parcels is what is, they might need an additional qualification. Is that it? Do we have an additional qualification?
RNH would be there.
RNH then is point,
0.14 acre, and it does allow for subdivision at 0.14 if there's sewer.
Right.
so that means the 7.47 acres could be 0.14.
No, I would say anything 1.5 acres or larger should go to a different designation of a 1 acre lot size. I don't know if that's conservation, R1, something like that, because we don't want to encourage more density in this area because of the flooding, the drainage issues. We don't want to make the other existing buildings suffer the consequences from overdevelopment on those larger lots. But there's only 5 of them in that list.
Well, over 1.5, but there are 17 between 1 and 1.5, so that's quite a bit of additional density.
And if you would like to, I'd be very open to hearing anything 1 acre or over going to a different designation. That would be fine, but I'm thinking for these smaller lots.
So can we go through the smaller lots and call them the RNH? Can we do that?
You mean the ones below 1 acre?
Yes.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yes, thank you. Thanks for recognizing me. I just wanted to address a couple things. We looked at something like this previous in this immediate area, and then I want to bring some attention to the development that occurred. SOMO is kind of, I think that's a common way it's referred, but I know that's not the actual name of it. That was the area that is just east of that road. There was a lot of discussion as this petition moved forward when they were looking at the paired patio homes. There was a lot of discussions of the impacts. Kind of when I was getting familiar with my role here, you know, I wanted to make it very clear. I even kind of offered the idea of doing some moratoriums on these areas because of the sensitivity of the environmental impacts. Obviously, that didn't get the support. So I want to make that point because we were talking about, I was talking about shovel ready, and then some of the conversation was kind of what our role is. Making a moratorium on that, it wouldn't have allowed anything to occur. So, you know, any type of developer can come in and build homes and make a profit. But we kind of put that conversation on the side. And now being more familiar with some of this, I understand why, but I just really want to make it clear I did suggest that. So my position is always very grounded in the environmental impact. So back to the SOMO. Those are large lots. They all have walkout basements. The amount of grading and earth moving was quite substantial to what would have happened if we did approve the paired patio homes. As that conversation precipitated, I think, Kelsey Fatonia did a good job of addressing that. But also, these larger lots could have way more of a significant environmental impact than creating smaller lots because of the footprint of the home, because of the earth grading that has to occur. So, I just wanted to bring that up because I think that's very important, because if we say we don't want to see density because of the environmental impact, we actually had more environmental impact leaving these as large lots. And then if you start looking at all the nuances, smaller lots, smaller property to build, the shared construction wall, smaller construction costs, we can't predict what someone's going to sell them for, but that could potentially reduce what their investment need is to then, yield a profit to make them want to develop. So that I kind of thoughts around this and around certain types of density. But again, I want to mention that I even was looking at a moratorium to do nothing on this until we got through some of this CDO process. Now we're wrapped in an annexation and everything else, so it's just getting way more complicated. But I think that point needs to be made and brought up and very transparent, that some of the larger lots actually has a greater environmental impact because of what they have to do to build those homes or what type of home. So I thank you.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I see, excuse me, several non-residential lots listed on here, and I think we should consider separating those out in addition to the lots over a certain acreage, because Clear Creek Cemetery, for example, jumps out at me. There's a lot of vacant land there, and I'm concerned that if we rezone that R&H, that could turn into a subdivision. So I think we need to separate out the non-business uses as we're discussing this.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. Now, staff, do you have a way that you could quickly guide us through that? Or should we table this for another meeting when we sort it out so that we can discuss these on a property, I guess, by property basis?
I was able to sort the data just now, and I could select.
Yes.
So there's, most of it's single family dwelling. There's a couple of 2-family dwelling. The exempt rural church, religious use. There's 1 industrial warehouse. And then we get into like commercial housing and a detached retail. So there's not a lot.
Okay.
Like, there's a handful of businesses that are like showing up in the property report card.
Well, can we go through and sort those out right now so that we can begin to talk about the remaining?
Sure. The property at 5008 South Rogers Street, that is an industrial warehouse. Give me a moment, I can pull that one up. I think it's 1.4 acres. So this one right here. Yeah, this one's in the list. But I think, is this one PUD?
Yeah. Oh. This is a 1.4 acre, so that would fall in
This is in a
that.
PUD, and we can't do anything with a PUD anyways.
It's in a PUD, so then there's nothing we can do with that, so we can cross that one off our list, 5008 South Rogers Street. And could you guide us to the next one then? The Clear Creek Christian Church, I guess?
Sure. Let's see. I really like this multiple parcel numbers that we could search now. Okay.
That's cool.
So these are the Clear Creek Christian church, and then the cemetery also included here as well.
Okay, so that would begin with 530 West Church Lane, or which one do you have on? I can't read that.
There's 530 West Church Lane and 5201 South Rogers.
And so we take those off our list?
And 5233 South Rogers.
And she has more.
And 5123 South Rogers.
There's 5405 South Rogers,
Yep.
too.
Yeah,
There
there
you
were
go.
6 properties.
6 properties.
Are you able to find those, Jackie? Are you sorted? Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4. I'm at 4. 5405, okay.
So these are I'm assuming not being considered for the RNH. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. I'm going to delete.
Madam Vice President, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. Just to seem like there's a silence here. So this is, I guess, to planning. I'm commented that, there wasn't recommendations maybe that planning was providing based off of the comments, but would I have this somewhat correctly that there is a proposed zoning map, and that's what planning had put together. So that would kind of be their initial position on these.
Yes.
Okay. With that said, I feel like community development is a appropriate zone, and especially since we have the planning department, their staff, the expertise that they provide, recommending that. I think I'm going to continue to probably defer a lot to what the draft zoning map already has moving forward.
And I'm just for letting everyone know, I'm currently using Beacon, which only has our current zoning map on it. I can toggle over to the CDO map of the area so we can reference it, but I can't do the multiple parcel selection. What I have selected here right now, the property report card is showing other commercial structures. And that is just the way it's being taxed is other commercial structures, and that is 5 parcels.
5, because some of these are not-for-profit structures, like a church, for example, and a post office and a school.
I'm not sure. Without more.
So those would be institutional, most likely, or not the church, but certainly the post office and the school.
I know the post office already was rezoned.
I see.
To RNH. That was a previous request back in February. And I
About the property
think-
owned, sorry, go ahead.
I'm trying to use multiple spreadsheets here.
I think what would be really helpful for me, and I hate to propose delaying this, but I think it would be incredibly helpful to see a couple of columns added to this spreadsheet, one with lot size and one with current zoning, so that we could kind of go through row by row. So I think that would be my recommendation. If staff could add a couple of columns to the spreadsheet before we convene again on Tuesday, I think we could make quick work of this.
I agree. I think that we just don't have the information we need to
Yeah.
review this at this moment.
I affirm with that comment.
Yeah, and I would ask if we could get a copy of this as a Excel file instead of a PDF, because that would help a lot, because I'm bouncing back and forth, and you can do some work with, once you have the columns, we can do some work with putting them in a different order or whatever. Sounds good.
Okay, sounds good. Well, I'd like to request from everyone here a preference of reviewing Heritage Woods Road comments or the Victor Pike comments next. Is there any consensus?
Can I ask a question about this
Yes.
one before we move on? There's property, City of Bloomington, Indiana Board of Parks Commissioners, and it was requested RNH and the Public Service Company of Indiana. Are those properties going to be taken out too for reasons already we discussed?
Right, this was just suggested by 3 people from the public to rezone all of these other individual properties. briefly just brought up before you kind of for some guidance as to how you want to tackle it.
Okay.
But we can add the 2 columns for next meeting.
Just to reiterate the columns that you'd like to see added, lot size, current zoning.
Yeah.
Would it be helpful to see draft zoning filled out and tax assessment?
A tax assessment would be helpful.
Okay.
Draft
Yes,
zoning too would be very helpful.
Yes and yes.
yes.
And we can probably get that as a spreadsheet
Yes.
also. Yeah. Okay.
Well, since it was first in our book, let's refer now to 4691 South Victor Pike comments.
I think we completed that the other
We
day.
Completed
we
that?
finished
Okay.
that one.
Okay, then we're at East Heritage Woods Road.
Right.
Okay. Sorry about that.
And we added 1 comment to this. It was a tabled item for someone that had the desire to be, I think it was a request to the RES zoning. Yeah, okay.
Okay,
So I'm going to utilize the maps that a member from the public sent out and put together. So this is the area of focus. There's, I believe, 2 kind of areas, 2 different types of neighborhoods. I think if I'm correct, none of these are platted subdivisions. Something, like they never were officially platted via the traditional style. So we just recognize them as lots of record. This is the current zoning that shows up. It's a mix of the CBR, which requires a 2.5 acre lot size to do any further development on the property. And then the res zoning is 1 acre or less. And I will point out right here, we have this is the property that we started looking at last meeting, but it was tabled when we were looking at this as a whole. I believe that their request was maybe to have it all zoned as CBR. That then can become problematic when someone wants to do an addition or add a shed, then they are beholden to have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a minimum lot size variance. And yeah.
And what would be, in a nutshell, benefits of being in CVR versus res?
minimum lot size.
I mean, yeah, we have it's the combination of design standards and then also the uses.
Right.
And so the res use, we do know like accessory livestock is available, traditional agriculture if you're over 2 acres. So we both, I mean,
There's pros and cons.
yes.
Yeah. But I guess I just wanted that for the public's edification if
They're
they're.
requesting
Mhm.
CBR over everything.
I do think these should all be the same zone, and I'm open to hearing what folks think about which one.
Well, I'm not so convinced that they should be the same zone because there are actually 2 different homeowners associations there that are organized more as road maintenance organizations. So the properties toward the front are in a Chitwood development, and the properties toward the back are Heritage Woods Road, and the topography is very different.
I'm only talking about Heritage Woods Road.
Yes. So am I.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the Chitwood. I'm just talking about.
Well, the first properties on East Heritage Woods Roads are in the Chitwood.
Right, but I'm talking about
Just the green
the
properties?
list of items we have in our, I don't think it matters whether somebody has a homeowners association or not, whether it's a cooperative or not. I think I would just like to see one zone here, but I don't know which one.
Okay, are you referring to the properties at the front, to the west on East Heritage?
Referring to the properties on the list.
These 4 properties on the list?
There are 4 properties on this list, and then if you look at, yeah, I have a different list. Sorry, I made that myself. That was my own. So I'm talking about, I mean, if you want to split off, so what they have on this map in figure 2 is Chitwood versus Heritage Woods. If you want to separate those two, that's fine with me too. But there needs to be consistency in those groups.
Okay,
I'm using that blue and red map now.
I see, I see.
Just to be clear, the draft is kind of have this as somewhat of a hybrid, if you will, of res and ag being proposed in the draft.
It's res and CVR, conservation residential.
I probably could click on them. Yeah, okay, it's the transparency with the green. Thank you.
You know, just because I know some of the people on this road and I've heard different problems with the road, et cetera, and how it's more of a road maintenance organization rather than a homeowners association that's organized there. I think it's important to keep Chitwood and Heritage Woods Road separate from each other because the lot sizes and the topography are different. And I do know that, for example, in the Chitwood subdivision, there was I think, demolished property on the north side that would not be able to be built upon again if they were put into the CVR designation. But it's a vacant lot under the 2.5 acres. It'd only be like a 1 acre lot. And by putting CVR over everything, it would remove that lot as a potential lot on that could be built.
Yeah, it seems to me like the cleanest way of doing this would be to make everything in the Chitwood half residential and everything in the Heritage Woods half CVR.
If you do that, if you look at this chart right here, you have some of these which are res.
You need to move your microphone over because it's being recorded. Sorry. You can move it over.
I think there does need to be consistency.
I am going for consistency. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah,
You shouldn't
that's
have a
my recommendation.
hodgepodge. It's the same neighborhood.
Right.
Right.
That's my recommendation based on the fact that the lots in the Chitwood side are much smaller than the lots in the Heritage Woods side.
But if you, okay, so if you look at the map in this particular area right here, which paper,
You need to be on the microphone.
could you recategorize that as a CVR without any ramification, without looking at that property?
So there are some that would be pre-existing non-conforming if we converted them to CVR, from res to CVR, but I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So do we have agreement that the Chitwood will become res and the Heritage Woods Road will be classified as CVR? Do we have consensus on that? Let's just show hands. Dee's on. She raised her hand. Penny and Jerry. Okay. Okay, so it's unanimous.
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, then you're abstaining or no?
That's it's not really an official vote. I have a difference of opinion. I think some of what you're suggesting is ideal, and then some. I guess my main concern is what was expressed by planning is making some of these pre-existing non-conforming, and if they want to do any kind of thing on their lot moving forward, they have to go to a BZA process, which is not guaranteed. So we might be hindering folks of putting in a shed and building a porch. And I think the approach planning took was the right approach. So I agree with planning.
Julie, you had said that they should be similarly.
I've already voted.
Yeah,
I don't
I
wanna
have
talk
to.
about
Yeah, we can move forward.
Okay.
I just
Okay, boy, you guys are a rough crowd.
So do we
We're
need to
mo-
go, do we need to go back to the chart?
We've voted.
I know we did, but
Yeah.
do we need to go back to the chart and say which is what on here, or?
They're not all listed, so we can't.
We can sort through that because this list was all inclusive within either the Chitwood or the Heritage Woods.
Right here.
Other side, on the other side. This will
I
be.
got it.
Okay. Okay, so now we're at Worms Way, lots 1 and 2. Comments.
All right, so we had, this one was decided back in June 4th of 2024 that the draft zoning be limited business, and it did receive a vote of 6-0. We can let anybody know who cast what vote if necessary. We are still getting comments on this one, both dissatisfied, and some of them because the owner and developer, people wanting to use the lot, are wanting GB, general business zoning. But then also we have one neighbor who made 2 comments that they would rather see it go back to the ag zoning district or change the use table. And I guess I can pull this up on a map.
This one's a tough one, and I will say that the fact that LB includes what are essentially light industrial uses, I'm not comfortable with LB in this location because we have neighbors who have been there. And when they went in there, there was a nursery and ag business, and that could still be done on that property using the ag zone. It could become a number of other things based on what's outlined in the ag zone. And I hope that that's what happens. I hope that something comes in here. And I know that it's, up against the highway and the frontage road, and we've talked this through a number of times, but I'm going to err on the side of the neighbors here who have been very thoughtful and very consistent in addressing their concerns.
Yes. Mr. Morris?
And if I remember correctly, there was a use variance granted for Worms Way to go there in the first place. So that was a risk that the current owner took when they built the Worms Way complex on that property.
It was a special exception, but similar,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Mr. Pittsford?
This is a difficult property. What I would like to be able to do is get kind of staff's a professional, get from staff a professional opinion on this. If we eliminate the building that's there and we eliminate the history and we look at the location, what zoning falls on this? It's adjacent to an interstate. It is access through an access road that has other businesses along it. It does indeed back up to a residential neighborhood, but there are other businesses along the frontage road. So taking the history away, what is this property? What is the best and highest use of this property? Not what is the most favorable use for the present owner? What is the most favorable use for the neighbors? What is the best and highest use?
So we've had a lot of history with this property, and I know you said not to include it, but I think it does help indicate just some of the things that the owners tried to do here. And so when we've worked through them on some of those cases, we have indicated and walked the site and the distances from the neighborhood, the access only being through North Wayport Road. we have drafted it as limited business. We hope that limited business is compatible countywide to be near residential. If there are uses that maybe are not compatible with nearby residential uses in the LB district, we could entertain looking at those 2-pagers and excluding out those uses. But I do think LB is what we've drafted it as, and I think that that's appropriate based on our review. But of course, you guys make the final.
Right, okay. And that's where I want to go with that next then is part of the reason I said imagine the buildings aren't there because my understanding is that this property's present value is based on the cost of demolition of all the buildings. So, the county says the value of this property is whatever it takes to take it back to zero. So that's where we need to zone it. So the next question is what zoning attracts kind of use we want to see there? It's that simple.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with the preamble that's, that.
What's not to agree with?
That people think that we here on the committee or some people on the committee think that its market value is based on the removal of existing buildings. No, I think
that's what the county assessor told me.
Yeah, that's
what the assessor.
That's what the county assessor told me.
Provided a letter.
Well, I don't know if I agree. Well, she says that.
Whether you agree or not doesn't change the fact that that's the assessed value of it.
Well, the market. I don't know if I'm not comfortable with the idea that it has been adequately marketed to a similar business that had existed there before.
But we're not in the business of determining market. We're in the business of determining best use.
Okay.
And the current value of the property. And the effect that the zoning has on the value and usability of the property.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
Oh, yeah, I'm just exhausted, really exhausted. First, I want to make sure that everyone knows I don't put anyone on a pedestal. Some vague comments were made, and looking at the best use might mean, allowing development to occur. And I think it's pretty understandable. Most people make purchases to maybe wash their costs, have a financial gain. If that's just one person buying property, building on it, and it comes to a point they need to sell it, they need to sell it. With that said, I want to also echo my comments where, I was in favor of putting a moratorium to not allow any development on sensitive ground. But I'm just plain exhausted because we can make a recommendation by this body, but eventually it moves forward. And we have, and we're back into this discussion again. I feel like we're just kind of going around and around on the same things that we've discussed and provided recommendations. And it is factual. This lost a lot of significant value by the rezoning. The assessor wrote a letter to us expressing that. And I feel like when Oliver Winery was wanting to expand, the neighbors came and were pretty upset about that. In this area, you have a great neighborhood, so they can mobilize and come and talk about their opinion, but is that the best use of this property? I feel like to comments the last time we discussed this at the Plan Commission that were made, that this is ideal as far as what is already built for a limited business versus other areas that are more ideal for ag or conservation type uses. We're talking about having a commercial septic. We're talking about already having existing structures. I also wanted just to mention from last night's meeting, we were talking about reducing commercial space, because we're anticipating that may not be needed because of the change of the markets and stuff. Yeah, we can't dictate the markets. I do think we need to have a good grasp, but we don't know what could potentially occur here. And I think I'm in complete support with planning. They looked at this. We dealt with this 1,000 different times. But even if we choose to leave it limited business, that still isn't a done deal. So I'm just getting exhausted.
Commissioner Githens?
Would you remind us Jackie or Tammy or Drew, what all is allowed in limited business in case there are things that we'd like to strike to
Yes.
make this?
That's, yeah,
Yeah.
the one thing is this.
So light industrial manufacturing can go on there.
I have the CDO draft, current draft of the limited business permitted uses pulled up. Do you want me to just read those?
Yes, please.
Okay, they're broken up into different categories. We have agricultural uses, we have agricultural traditional, community or institutional garden, farm supply and equipment sales and or repair, logging or forestry operations. Then we have residential uses, boarding house, continuing care community, emergency housing or short-term shelter, residential facilities for individuals with a developmental disability, residential facilities for individuals with a mental illness. The next category is public and semi-public uses, child care center, farmers market, governmental facility, medical clinic, parks and playgrounds, relocation of pole signs, schools, social service use, minor utility, wireless communication facilities. Then we have personal service uses, artisan crafts, food or beverage production, caterer and or commercial kitchen, dry cleaning and laundry, financial institution, personal services, real estate sales / model home office, religious facilities, and then rehabilitative therapy facility. Next, we have business uses. We have office and parking facility. Next, we have retail uses, cafe / coffee shop, firearm sales, microbrewery / brew pub, pharmacy, restaurant, sit down, retail sales, small scale. Next, we have automotive and transportation uses, only one in that category, electric vehicle charging station. Next category is construction and industrial uses, construction trailer, general contractor, industrial equipment sales and rental, industrial manufacturing, light. And then finally, the last category, mixed uses and adaptive reuse, commercial mixed use. And then that's all of the primary uses that are listed. There's also a whole additional section for conditional uses as well as accessory uses.
Well, I'm never going to remember all of that, but I guess that for me, dry cleaning would not be appropriate in that area, I don't think, because of the landscaping and what's up there. And I'm not sure what all comes under light industrial at this point.
So I will point you to, if it's helpful, the CDO website under useful links. We do have a ability to see all of the districts that are being combined. So if you look under industrial manufacturing, let's pull this open. I think I've shared it with the Plan Commission in the past, but it's been some time. We updated this. So on the left-hand side, you have the proposed consolidated uses, and then in the middle column, it'll say what the existing use is. Since we're going from over 370 uses down to more like 170 uses, there's been quite a bit of consolidation. So the definition for manufacturing, industrial manufacturing light will include things like engineering and scientific instruments that's currently in the ordinance, light manufacturing, which is currently in the ordinance, wood products, gunsmithing, jewelry products, leather goods, musical instruments, watches and clocks, and that includes that list. But basically, the way we differentiate it between light and heavy, light industrial manufacturing is not working with raw products. You're getting products and you may be just like putting those together for reuse or sale.
Less transportation involved in terms of trucking and.
Typically, yes.
So like the leather is not, you get the, I don't know whether the right term, cured leather, you're not doing the tanning and things like that on site.
Yeah, I think for me, some of it is just the proposed uses from the past event, the past petitions that have been problematic, and I can understand why for those neighbors. And so, you buy a piece of property and the property's ag, and somebody puts in, gets the okay and puts in a nursery, great. But they don't expect, a Walmart to show up there because we've decided to rezone it because that's the highest use of the land or the most money that can be made from it. So I think we have to think about people who have invested in their properties. And I think for me, limited business is, I would be okay with limited business if there weren't so darn much retail that can be 24/7, like a pharmacy. That's the kind of thing that pushes me away from because it doesn't preclude 24/7 operations or drive-through windows, not at the restaurant, but at the pharmacy, or, things like that. And so that worries me a bit, because yes, there's a line of trees there, and yes, there's a highway on the other side. I just, you don't want headlights, in December when there's no leaves on those trees, scoping through your window every 10 minutes. That's the kind of thing that worries me about limited business for this area. I think a business could go there, and I think there are a lot of options that are ag related that could fit under ag, that they're just obviously not looking for. They were permitted a use that they never used from the BZA years ago. But I think that's my biggest concern about limited business is some of those uses can involve a lot of traffic, even if the light industrial doesn't. Those other retail uses could. And, it just makes it tough. It just makes it tough, the 24/7.
Mr. Pittsford?
I was looking at Elevate, and it looks like there is a 1.8 acre lot owned by Windsor private homeowners that goes behind the Worms Way. So if that was part of the original plat, it almost seems to indicate to me that the developer anticipated creating a buffer, which then says they knew that it was not going to be an ag use there, or they knew that the possibility for a use that they found that they would like to be separated from was either there or going to be there. Additionally, on this road, you have Bloomington Auto Supply, which is an auto salvage yard, and it looks like this buffer strip is extended all the way down to where Windsor private property joins that as well. And then on the, I guess it would be the east of that, Bloomington Auto Salvage, there's another parcel owned by Windsor private homeowners to create a buffer between them and the auto salvage yard. So I find that the argument that we didn't anticipate these things being in our neighborhood, and we don't want them because we didn't know that was going to happen, is a little more disingenuous when you recognize the fact that buffers were created in the development of the subdivision.
I brought that point up when that was being discussed, and I'm trying to find the plat. If anyone else has it more handy, I actually think it specifies it's meant for a buffer.
Based on that and the staff's recommendation, I think the only thing I can support is limited business.
Mr. Morris?
I think given the number of times we've discussed this property in previous meetings, I think I would lean toward keeping it an ag use. And if a purchaser comes forward that has an idea, then that gives the neighbors an opportunity to hear what that proposal is. That's where I'm leaning.
Right. Sorry.
I'm just going to check first because Mr.
Absolutely.
No, okay. Yes, Mr. Enright Randolph?
I appreciate that. Scott, if he had anything, he definitely deserved to go in front of me. I think that's one of my biggest issues here is if they want to do this, let's have them go through that process. That gives them no sense of assurity or predictability that they could get any of this done. So why would they go through it again if we've seen this time and time and it's not permitted and it's denied? Also, I think this goes to a more arching concern of mine is if we downzone absolutely everything and really limit it to a point where anything outside of what is permitted has to go through this process, it turns everything into a negotiation, turns everything a bit ambiguous. And the need for a plan commission is still needed, but it's not that significant because it's eventually going to go to the Board of Commissioners for a rezone request. And I just want to make that very clear that that's beginning to be a larger concern of mine, that we're turning everything into a negotiation. And we have to think about how leadership moves through county government. It's not always the same. I'm in an elected role. I have to be very cautious of that as well. And one of my biggest things is to put in safeguards so the office can withstand leadership changes. We haven't done this since 1997. And my math, I'll say I'm bad at math, but I'm actually pretty good at numbers. 27 years. I'm not sure how many same people are going to be here 27 years again while we look at this. But if it turns into the fact that we limit everything to the most basic abilities to develop, it's not good planning. It's leverage. It's negotiation. And I agree that people serve in capacities, which that's their responsibility, and I respect that tremendously. And I respect the people that do hold their ground even more. But that is becoming a larger and larger concern of mine.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Commissioner Giftens will speak. I have something to say, and then Colonel Ferris.
I was just going to say that when we were talking about things that I think it was 5100 South Victor Pike, we said we weren't going to do a change in zoning without making people go through the proper kind of process. I think the same thing holds here, in my opinion.
Okay, and I just
For consistency of how we're making decisions. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And I mean, I just want to address just one kind of cardinal rule of thumb. And part of the exhaustion that you might feel, Mr. Enright Randolph, has to do with this rule of 7. You know, we have heard this many times, and we have not approved it many times, and we're getting close to having heard it 7 times, you know, and so bear with us. I'm going to be voting to have it to honor what the neighbors had requested and vote for it to be agricultural, and that with the understanding that yes, we're all getting worn out by this continued repetition of the same type of request before us and the neighbors' considered response. But at the same time, we've deliberated and decided and deliberated and decided and deliberated and decided, and now we're deliberating and deciding again, and you might have 3 more times. So Colonel Ferris?
I listened to what Jerry said, and I agree with what Jerry said. I believe it's limited business. We've talked about this many times. We are in a do loop right now. We're just talking in circles. So I think we just make a decision, take a vote on it, and go from there.
Yes.
I'm going to propose something really bold here. Can you put that map back up that you just had up? Because that was awesome. That's exactly what I was going to ask for. The current map that shows the parcels and the houses behind it. I would recommend, no, this is old. I couldn't get the address up. This is old. So what I'm thinking is the property to the south becomes LB, the property to the north remains ag. And if they want to make that LB, they can come and ask for it. But I think if we get, that's the larger property, but it's also furthest away from the residents. So I'm trying to map a compromise here, and it's not a split zone because they're two different parcels. But I don't want to go any more intense than LB. But I do think that, I'm torn on this one. Clearly, I'm torn on this one. But I do think that that may be a good compromise for now. And if they want to make the other lot ag, from ag to LB, they can come and talk to us about it and hear from the neighbors.
Do we do a show of hands?
So that would be LB for the southern lot is 7850 North Wayport.
Just trying to.
Just to be more
Just a
specific,
second.
actually, I can just look at my own thing here, my own
You should go through
elevate.
the appeals
So
process.
to the south is
larger lot.
what was probably the original commercial structure for foot traffic, so to speak, but for
The storefront.
right, the store, that's the word I was looking for, thank you. Yeah, you know what, I think I can support that. Because I think that's building, I think this represents the original intent of limited business in this location. The building on up the hill there, maybe not quite so much.
Okay, so that's a proposal. So is there a show of hands for that? So,
See what Dee says.
yeah. Dee, did you have anything you wanted to say about this?
Put your hand up.
No, I think that we just need to make a decision and move on. This can be dealt with at another time if need be by BZA or by Plan Commission or the commissioners.
Okay. So you support the split? Okay.
Okay with that.
All right. So, great. Thanks for the good discussion and for the good ideas and for the good review of that complicated property. I think,
Julia, thank you for the compromise.
yes,
That's what it's all about.
yes. So we're going on to HP overlay properties. Is that it now?
Okay, so we do have a large list of HP overlay properties. So the HP board was asked if they had any properties in mind that they would like to put forward through the CDO process.
Tammy, can you share your screen? Sorry.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh.
Or you want me to?
No, just exited the whole meeting accidentally.
I can share.
I've got you.
1 second, I can
You're
share.
not allowed to leave so easily.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. I'll get it.
There we go.
Okay, while that's being pulled up, the HP board was asked if they would like to recommend any specific properties for the HP overlay or structures, and they were able to compile a list for you all to review. Now, they normally have the position of having a property owner come to them. They've maintained that position for quite some time. They aren't, they do not often go out and seek HP overlay designation on their own as a board action. They'd like to have the conversation initiated by the property owners. However, given this unique situation and opportunity to look at some properties that have particular notable outstanding rated characteristics from the IHSSI survey and the SHARD database that are all state surveys of properties. They have compiled this list. So you'll note on the spreadsheet that there is a number of columns that indicate the SHARD database recommendation, not recommendation, survey result, as well as whether or not that particular structure is in the state register or the national register. And then they've also gone to the length of incorporating the remaining columns of whether or not that particular property, based on their review, meets those specific criteria from Chapter 810-3, which are the main criteria the board reviews in order to recommend approval for an HP overlay. So we can go line by line for each of these if we'd like. There are a number of common names that are associated with some of these properties, as well as there's a number of non-residential structures or business structures that you'll see, including stone walls, as well as a few churches and cemeteries, as well as a few train trestles that were identified through their review of the county.
I'll also note, we have not spoken with the lot owners regarding this proposal for an HP overlay. We do see that several of these items are like stone walls on properties, which we'd really like to see added to some sort of map, because we're often called and asked, like, is there a stone wall there? And we're like, we're not sure. So getting those documented and put into a historic preservation overlay, I think makes great sense. But I would suggest maybe a little bit more review or discussion regarding each of the homes or other structures that would then be going through a process for change.
I have a really quick comment.
Yes.
I see the value of having a historical overlay. Our director's comment, not knowing what the homeowner or the owners really want really makes me feel a little uncomfortable. So, and the amount of potential restrictions and restraints it puts on properties when you do get designated under this HP overlay is convoluted. I even think some folks that go through the process don't fully understand what necessarily they're getting into. So I'm just going to recuse myself on this whole batch. Sorry.
Oh, Mr. Pittsford, I'm sorry.
4725 North Campbell Park Road, is that not in the town of Ellisville zoning jurisdiction? It's like literally across the road from the town of Ellisville zoning office.
Will you say that address one more time?
4725 North Campbell Park Road.
That is actually in the county.
That's literally in the county zoning.
Yes.
The town of Ellisville owns the property adjacent to it. Is it in the county zoning too?
The town of Ellisville jurisdiction is to the north, the east, the south, west, the west.
That is hilarious. That is hilarious. Ellisville's.
Yeah, you can see it on that map.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's not spot annexation. That's over time failure to clean up the town borders. I tried to do that 24 years ago.
But
obviously I was not 100% successful.
But the way
I knew that there was a piece over by the ballpark and where the Turtleback swimming pool is that was not in there, and I tried to get that taken care of. I would say that we preclude this property just because it should not be in the town of or it should be in the town of Ellisville zoning, and regardless of what we do with this, I would like to see that one removed. And just out of curiosity, the 6445 Maple Grove Road, how close is it to the town of Ellisville zoning? Because I'm pretty sure the Cook plant there behind Matthews Mansion went into the town of Ellisville.
I'm kind of confused about how staff recommends that we review these. Should we review these line by line or as a group, according to you?
They could individually be reviewed. We could also do, like, we could do it by, there's stone walls, cemeteries, and then structures. We could do it that way as well. If you were
Stone walls, cemeteries, and structures. I kind of like that. Is there anything we'd miss by doing that, Commissioner Thomas?
I actually have a follow-up question to this. So, were all of these owners, whether it be of a wall or a house or a farm, were all of these folks notified in any way that this was under consideration?
No, so we received this list, I believe, around September 18th, and people were directed to look at the zoning map when we sent postcard notices around August 10th.
Okay, all right. I remember that we reviewed the Millison house.
This is not inclusive of the current HP overlay list. So the current HP overlay list we're leaving alone. So that's about 17 properties. That includes like Friendship Bridge, Melisan House, and then also Mr. Morris's property.
Right, but then that house is on here again, number 2.
It's the third one.
Oh,
Or second one.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I'll check that.
I have another quick question. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pittsburgh.
And sorry, Scott. The area, Maple Grove Road that's designated, is it designated a National Historic? So a lot of these properties are along that road because of the stone wall and everything. What is that? It's a National Historic District, right? Is that what the term is?
Are you talking about the Maple Grove Road Neighborhood Historic District?
Is that
like the area, or are you talking about a specific property?
Well, no, that area, because I know that when you drive out that way, there's a sign where it begins. So the properties on this list that fall within the area identified in that, I have absolutely no issue with those getting the HP overlay without really going door by door, owner by owner, and check and see if they're okay with the HP designation, because they bought or accepted into, I mean, it's there, that designation is there, I guess I should say. Others, I feel like a little more direct notice to property owners before putting an HP on them would be appropriate.
Yes, I think Colonel Ferris was next, and then Commissioner Thomas.
You stole some of my thunder.
Sorry.
With the
Great minds.
So I'm a homeowner, and now you're going to take, and I haven't been notified, and I don't know you're doing this, and now all of a sudden it's part of this HP overlay. Okay. Education for me. What is the impact upon that homeowner when you do that, when they want to do anything?
So there are restrictions, but there are also benefits. It depends on what you're doing.
What you just said is there are restrictions and
There are restrictions, but there are benefits. But I don't know about stone wall, and that's different from, I'm thinking house when I say that.
What I'm thinking is they don't know anything
No,
about this.
yeah.
I've received several kind of complaints about HP overlays, also benefits. So again, I'm kind of torn. When I say recuse myself, that's not because I'm not in favor of some of these, but I'm also opposed to some of these. And one of the complaints I got is someone just wanted to put up vinyl siding on their house because it was deteriorating and they couldn't because they had to restore it, and they now are kind of locked into this, and then if they want to resell, they have to then kind of still kind of meet those kind of higher standards that could be very costly. So now they can't even really sell the property. And those are just complaints that I've gotten in my office.
But at the same time, there are grants available for people who want to restore a house. So can I ask my
Yes,
question,
please.
which is different? On the bottom of page 23, you have the second to the last item. It just says South Victor Pike, but there's a parcel number. And when I looked up that parcel number, it's a cemetery. The Ketchum Cemetery.
That was cut off. I noticed that when we PDF'd this, we didn't recognize that it wasn't wrapping the text.
Oh, got it. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Great.
Okay.
It does
So
say
I
that.
just want to make sure that we get
Yeah.
those. Now, I am, this one in particular, I just going to throw another thing into this about why it's important to do this. This is a cemetery in mineral extraction zone. Right? So yeah, we need to preserve this, right? There, give and take on all of these. I do understand that everybody was notified, but I'm not sure everybody was notified if they were considered potentially for an overlay, right? Because that came out of the Historic Preservation Board and it's not part of the regular set of documents that people saw. So I would like to have these folks notified, create a letter for a cemetery, create a letter for a house, create a letter for a stone wall. What are the limitations? Here's the exact statute. No one's going to read it or understand it. But in layman's terms, what are the limitations? What are the benefits? What are the restrictions? What are the gains? And I think that would be the best. I am all in favor of reviewing all of these. I just don't know that this needs to happen now, but I'm so glad that the board put this together for us.
I
Because
agree.
It's a good start.
Yeah, it's great, and this is a good list to go off of to notify the neighbors or the homeowners, and keeping consistent with all of your beliefs, Commissioner Thomas and Commissioner Githens and Commissioner Jones. You're involving the property owners and what affects and impacts their property, and I have nothing but respect for that. So we put these on hold, we notify the neighbors, and then we figure out how to deal with it down the line on another plan commission meeting or something else. Yes, Mr. Morris?
I just want to make one comment because I own one of the properties on the list, so I want to.
I don't know. Do you agree to have
I do agree, and
Okay,
but
we
I
can
think
take care of that one.
right, yeah, if we could cross that one off now. It's one of the ones on Victor Pike with the stone wall. So the stone wall is the only historical aspect of that property. It's a house that was built in the 1980s. So I think from a property owner standpoint, I absolutely want to protect the wall, but if the shed finally falls down, which is going to any day now, what does that mean in terms of can I rebuild the shed, or does it have to go before the HPP board to put a shed in the backyard? So I just think, a conversation, letting the homeowners know what this means. And I know a half a dozen or so here on the list on Victor and Church that would respond back right away and said, yeah, let's protect the wall. So hopefully this is not as daunting as what it seems when we look at this list.
Exactly.
So is this a kick the can?
This is a kick the can.
I think this is a kick the can, but I think my follow-up question is this a petition? Can the HP board bring this as a petition to us as a plan commission?
Outside of the CDO process?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to do it that way.
I agree.
Staff could be more of the applicant and then work with the HP board. I think they would like that as well. I don't know.
I appreciate having this list. This is huge. So
Me too.
please extend our gratitude. Yeah.
Yes.
If you bring them in groups, that would be really handy. You don't have to do them all at once, Yes, Mr. Enright Randall?
Kind of along that line, maybe even in categories like you discussed, like if we're looking at a stone wall or if we're looking at a house, I think that those are quite different because we're only putting a overlay on the wall versus the entire property potentially. So I think that could really help streamline the process and understand what impacts we're potentially going to put on these properties.
Okay, great.
And I'll just make one correction to my prior statement. The Meliason House actually had national registry nomination through the commissioners, but not local. So it's to be local. And
Oh.
so
It's not umbrellaed?
No, yeah, it's not.
Nationally protected.
Thank you for that.
It's, yeah, the different levels are interesting because they each protect against certain funds and projects that are being initiated through those departments. So nationally registered, you're protected from federal funded projects, state funded projects, and then local funded projects.
But do you think that by not approving, for example, the Millicent House that is already federally approved, that we're risking their benefit in another category? Should we, does the committee wish to approve the local HP if there's a national one? That's a question.
That's a good question.
I'll say for that property in particular, I think it's for sale right now. So we would want to work with the potential seller and potential buyer on that one.
Okay.
As well.
Yes,
Okay.
when you are designated or recognized by the state register or the national register, you're not necessarily protecting the structure from alterations that are made through the local permitting process. Only the local HP overlay would protect against changes made that way.
So,
Great information. Thank you. I was confused on that myself.
okay. So anybody else then on that? Okay. Well, staff had requested that we take a break in between this last part and the next part of our deliberations, and it's very timely for me, so we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yes, and we'll bring all of the HP designated items. Those are going to come to you in 2025 after the CDO is passed.
Perfect. Okay, thank you everyone so far for your good work and your good thoughts. I'll be right back.
Stack that stuff.
compilation of public comments for the Plan Commission's review. And Jackie, you're going to lead us through this, right?
I will lead you through this, yes. Okay, so I'm just going to talk
Thanks.
through some of the columns here since this is a different spreadsheet than the individual zoning map changes. So on the far left side, you'll see a column that's titled Source. This is how we originally received the comment. So whether it was during the hearing of the CDO, whether it was a written comment that we received, or whether it was item entered into the record that we received. So I think there were two items that were received into the record during the CDO meetings. One was the white paper, and then there was an addendum to that, and then there was also the Clear Creek Historic District. So those are the two things that we received, and the Clear Creek we already discussed under the zoning map, and then the white paper will be discussed as the text. And then the next column over is the theme frequency. This is just something I wanted to put in here in case it was helpful. Sometimes there was some duplication of comments, so we summarized those and put those as one comment. And then we tried to identify which section of the ordinance the comment pertained to. We did have a column in here that was staff answer. I took those out, and actually if you go to the monroecdo.com website, you'll see a new tab that we've posted that has over 50 questions that we were able to answer directly because they weren't directed towards the Plan Commission. So the Q&A from the CDO hearing, if you scroll down, they're organized, and we will refer back to these if there are any questions. But I just want to let you know that this page exists in case you get questions from people as to why their comment was not addressed. We did take everything and take it into consideration.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And then just quickly, the markings in red will be the questions to you. So I tried to bring up both information relevant to helping you make a decision and then also directly ask you a question at the end. So I'll just go through these line by line if that's okay.
And you've done a great job of organizing
Yes,
it for
that's
us and
really been helpful.
synthesizing us, so thank you.
Sure. And if there's any other information you need to make a decision, we can also do that as well. So the first comment that we have in here is under definitions. These aren't necessarily chronologically how they were received. It's just we sorted them by section of the ordinance. So first comment is someone would like us to review the definition of family in the CDO. And this person specifically had a concern for moving from 3 to 5 unrelated persons. So in the two columns I have on the screen, you'll see the left-hand side is the current definition of family under our current ordinance. And then on the right-hand side is the draft definition that we have under the CDO. So the question for the Plan Commission is whether they would like to change the definition of family. This was something that we started to discuss with the Ordinance Review Committee and also with the legal department. And we had used partially some information from the City of Bloomington's definition of family because it had gone pretty far into the legal system and was upheld. So we felt like it was a good benchmark to borrow language from because it already had gone through sort of the court system. So if you have any questions or want me to explain anything, I can.
I have one quick question. The idea from public and staff seemed to be fairly consistent with what was currently in there, but the Part C, a group of people, I won't read it to you because you're smart enough to do that on your own. That is absent from the other one, and I think it's extremely pertinent because it does cite the Federal Fair Housing Act Amendment of 1988. So having kind of looked at both of these, I'm probably more comfortable with the suggested definition than the one that's in there.
So in the
That
CDO
reason.
definition and not the current definition?
Or the one that says ideas from the public and staff.
Sure, there's just, so there's
Oh, I'm sorry, right.
the current definition and then the CDO definition. So are you saying that you would like to see C under CDO definition moved over to the left under current definition? Or would you say that you like the entirety of the current or the CDO definition?
So, whatever gets C in the right place.
Okay, so
Let
you
me
like
put it
C.
that way.
Okay.
Right.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
I think maybe along what Jerry's saying, and I just want to be clear, that CDO is what's being proposed. So currently we have the current definition that is stated, and then the CDO. So that language will be incorporated unless we change anything, correct? Okay, I just wanted to make sure, and yeah. That's it. I'm inclined to want to support staff on this because they gave a lot of thought, and from my understanding of the chart, it's the frequency of this was low. So I think zoning is one thing, but when we start talking about ordinances, I think the larger impact's really important, and I'm going to really kind of defer to planning a lot because 10 people, one person, 100 is significant. I want to hear all feedback, but when we're looking at something that impacts the entire county, I think really considering the expertise that planning can provide is extreme importance.
If I can recover real quickly, I did not read the CDO definition as I started to read that other one. I skimmed over that somehow. And when I saw current definition over here, I thought that meant the current CDO definition.
Sorry.
Like what we're currently using in the proposed CDO. Now that I see this CDO definition, I like it way better than what the current definition is. So I'm good with the middle column.
That's my fault. I gave you a black and white copy yesterday.
Well, when I looked at my screen, I went, oh.
I would just like to say that one of the reasons why I prefer the current definition is because we live in a unique community with a high prevalence of students, and the reason it was crafted historically for no more than 3 persons, no unrelated persons, is to limit the conversion of county housing into student housing. And so I am in favor of keeping the current definition.
I see your point, but I mean, it allows what, 3 non-related folks? I mean, how many homes out there like have 4 bedrooms versus 3 bedrooms? I mean, I feel like regardless of maybe trying to address that, I think we start talking about how people behave, the behavior of people, is it, I don't want to have this idea or stigma that all students are going to be party animals. It might be ideal to have 4 students so they can offset their costs so they can study together. But I get the idea. But I'm so.
Okay. So anyway, do we want to show? Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
I just want to note that the number is 5 in certain zones. And that's already going to be very dense housing. Dense. And that's concerning to me, especially because if you read the next line, along with their dependent children.
Right.
So it's 3 and their children, 5, so it's adults and their children.
Right.
I was addressing the current one, the way that where it permits 3 persons,
Adult children,
not so related. So I'm saying that
adult.
you could potentially already, as written, have 3 students renting a home, and that's fine.
So my concern with I like the wording of the CDO definition, but I don't feel comfortable with the 5.
Well, it also says maintaining a common household, which I think means that their finances are all commingled as well.
No,
So
no, I don't think so.
what does it mean to maintain a common
They share
household?
the same bathroom or something?
What
If-
is the definition of maintaining a common household?
Can I jump in? Because what I think it is when you have those apartments that, all the millions of student apartments they built for IU in the city, people rent a room, but they share the kitchen and the living space. But the room that they rent is theirs. That is considered common housekeeping. That they're sharing that larger space, but renting separate. That's my worry. Yep.
Ferris?
Where'd 5 come from?
Sorry, what did you say?
Said, where did 5 come from?
That was modeled off of the city's ordinance.
City modeled that off of their ordinance. What was that based on?
Good question.
You see where I'm going with that? Just because the city
Yeah.
did it doesn't mean we have to do it unless there's
No,
something, a
absolutely.
statute, a regulation, a federal something that states there's a definition like this.
This prevents more than just students. And again, we brought the optics back to student housing. And this could be 5 grown adults that don't have the best income that need to share the cost of living. I mean, it can't be solely focused on preventing something versus what should be ideal. And again, we keep mentioning students. At this point in our community and what rent is, I can see adults that have a job in this community needing to share a space just so they're not living paycheck to paycheck. And if we limit it to 3, that's going to make it even more and more difficult.
I also would like to mention something about readability. Listen to the last part of the current definition. A family includes any domestic servants and not more than one gratuitous guest residing with the family. Such servants shall be included in the unrelated person limitation of this definition and shall not be in addition thereto.
It's for the live-in nanny.
Who wrote that? Was that you back a few years ago?
I wouldn't
Somebody-
have written
somebody
that
with
because
an
I had a
ascot
degree to
wrote that.
show I was smart. I didn't need to
Yeah.
fake it with words.
I think my concern, again, with going to 5 is the zones that are outlined are zones where it's already very dense housing. And I don't know that the size would even fit that many people plus their children, which aren't limited in number. I'm not sure that it would fit. So I like our new definition because we don't have live-in nannies and most of us. And but I'm concerned about the 5-person.
I do have,
And I know Dave Schilling's online. I'm not sure if I can get him to address this. Does this put us in the county in any precarious situation to be litigated if we keep the current number as is versus increasing it to 5?
I do not believe so, Ron.
Okay.
Well, I'm in favor of keeping the current definition, except striking the word servant. Family includes not more than one gratuitous guest residing with the family. You can strike such servants.
I'm terribly uncomfortable with the notion that we can determine how many people somebody has in their house. I think the current CDO, or not the current definition, sorry, use the right terminology. I think the CDO definition is flexible enough to allow people to do what they need to do. It's sufficiently concise. And I think anything beyond that is really meddling in people's personal affairs about who they have in their home for a limited period of time.
The thing is, when you look at these kinds of definitions, it's about when there's a complaint. It's about what happens when there's a complaint and how nobody goes door to door and checks to see how many people are living in a home.
It's what maintaining
how many
common
dogs,
nuisance
how many
laws
whatever.
are
But if
for.
there's a complaint, then you go back and you go, yes, you have too many dogs, you have too many people. That's the reason for it. It's not to intrude on people's lives, but it's to protect those who live in the areas surrounding. But you see my point? It's
But
not,
I
it's
think
not
maintaining the common nuisance laws cover that. I think this is being overly particular and trying to address a problem that I don't think we have significant evidence even exists.
It doesn't exist because we have a limit of 3 people.
Yeah.
But I mean, did it exist before? My house, my choice.
Yes, Commissioner Githens.
I think that if, and I think that item C has to be in the definition no matter what it is.
I mean, we're bound by that anyway, so why do we have to explicate it, you know?
Well, there was a problem that the people went before the zoning appeals and.
It's not decided in the court, though. It's not decided in the court. So anyway, let's just.
I have one final comment, sorry.
Yes.
When it becomes an ordinance, that allows it to become something that could be a door-to-door type situation. I'm just saying, this starts to allow that to occur. You have 4 people that live in a house that aren't related, and they can address that. It doesn't matter if they're partying, it doesn't matter XYZ. This allows an avenue for that to start to occur, and it's currently like that, and I feel like it's way too strenuous, way too much of a burden to really try to put in an ordinance that limits folks to really decide what's best for their affairs when they're living, and I think moving it to 5 is a step in the right direction.
Mr.
I
Morris?
think we need input from legal too.
Mr. Morris?
Yeah, I think my comment, I understand what everybody's saying. I think my concern about the 5-person plus dependent children limit is that means in Harrodsburg, for example, we could have a small lot with 5 people and their multiple teenage children, and we could have 8 or 10 cars trying to parking in neighbors' property, parking on the street. And I think having 5 is too high in a situation like that. It doesn't give the county any room to address concerns from the neighbors. So I think my proposal would be to strike the line in the CDO definition about and 5 persons to make it just say a family may also be composed of not to exceed 3 persons, and then strike the part about 5 persons to say may not exceed 3 persons.
Not so related.
Not so related along with their dependent children. That would be my proposal.
We take a vote.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna get through this.
No, we can, maybe, we already have a hard stop at 3:30, so, and Mr. Pittsford has to leave, so.
I have to leave at 3.
I guess my real comment is like, if this is a real concern and this is a rental property, that can be put in a lease. And that can be dealt with in a number of different manners that could really, or maybe even, I don't know if it's appropriate in a covenants or such, but there are other avenues to address this and preventing it, and it doesn't need to be an ordinance where it's a one-size-fits-all approach that impact these different zoning designations.
Okay, so the proposal is to accept the public and staff's recommendation for the CDO definition, but amend it as Jeff Morris had stated. So all those in favor?
Amending, what was Jeff's amendment? To remove the numbers?
Striking the 5-person in the zone. So it would read, a family may also be composed of not to exceed 3 persons.
Not so related.
Along with their dependent children.
And then keep going.
Yeah.
So that
I'm comfortable with that, as to the extent that I'm comfortable with the limitation at all.
strike this.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford, for all of your good thoughts today.
Hand up.
Thanks.
E was.
Dee had her hand up
She
before.
did,
Yeah.
she did.
5.
Okay.
And I'm sorry I have to leave, but my wife made arrangements for dinner with friends in Indianapolis. And
Oh, fun.
All the
Have-
time to do my hair, I'll be in trouble.
Have fun. Okay, so the next item, we have a question to the Plan Commission. The ordinance differentiates between a mobile home park, PUD resort, and commercial campground. Is it important to create a new use regarding permanent commercial campground with multiple structures that are short-term leased. So Jackie, do you want to go over that a little bit more? What would you like from us?
Sure. So we just received a comment that someone would like to see land use for multiple permanent yurts to be available on one property. And that's been difficult to find an allowance for this under the current ordinance. And so we do receive quite a few calls about people wanting short-term, less than 30-day lodging agreements with multiple permanent structures, whether that be yurts, cabins, etc. And our current definition of commercial campground in the zoning ordinance specifies temporary structures, so tents, vacation mobile homes, RVs, those types of things that could be used as campsites. We don't really have something that allows multiple permanent structures that are individually short-term leased.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
I would like staff to look at creating this addition to the current commercial campground definition, and I think you could limit the structures in size, but just like the commercial campground, they would have to ensure they have water and septic facilities available. But I also, while we're opening that one up and looking at it, are there any requirements to provide a safe storm shelter at a commercial campground? And if so, I would make sure that it's in here as well.
We do have that in the mobile home community chapter, so we could just copy that over.
Perfect. Thank you. That
Ms.
was one of
Owens
my
has her
notes
hand
from
raised.
elsewhere.
Oh, does anybody else have anything? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I
Ms.
do.
Thank you.
You have to, the only thing you'd have to be careful about on this one is if you take an RV and you attach it to the ground, it becomes a structure. And we have a rule that says you can't live in an RV. So I think that would muddy up this water.
Well, thanks for providing that important insight.
Yeah, that's really
We do have RV park,
right.
so
I think her concern is that somebody could utilize one to try to do the other. So we maybe want to exclude RVs as part of the small structures, maybe, or if we limit the size, that might be enough. But yeah, you don't want to.
I think you eliminate the RV.
Yeah.
can you give me an indication? You said maybe limit the size. Are you saying size of the individual, like cabins or yurts?
Yeah.
Okay. And would there be a maximum number that would be appropriate for one site? Like if it's 10 acres, could they have 50 yurts or 50 cabins or?
I would say it definitely needs to be limited, but I don't know how to number that.
Okay, maybe by zoning density or something.
Maybe
There
by
could be density.
acreage.
Places you can do this anyway, a commercial campground. There's not that many places where you could do a commercial campground, right?
They're mostly in the rural zones,
Right.
so it could be
Should it be limited by
additional.
buildable area, like so many units per buildable area?
Okay.
Oh, that's a great idea.
But the-
Right, because they shouldn't be on non-buildable area.
Correct.
Right. All right. I like that.
Thank you. I guess just generally speaking, I'm in favor of flexibility in zones that are appropriate. And so kind of how this discussion is going forward, it sounds like I'd be in support because it's adding a little bit of flexibility. So, thank you.
So, but Dee's point was that those structures couldn't be an RV that they short-term rent out. That's
Right.
permanently, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And they do still have to meet building code, which I think is somewhat difficult for some of these structures, but that's separate from
Yeah,
planning.
yeah, we have to work
Well,
on that.
that's good.
Does that address your question, Dee?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, if I take my RV and literally and I attach it, I put it on a foundation, then it becomes a home. So
So I
it would,
think that
it's just something to think about when you're when you're thinking about yurts, what kind of structures can be put into this kind of situation? Is
Yes.
what is the overarching thought.
I do have a point later. I think it's at the very end, D, but I think I do get your point, and I want to talk about that further.
Okay, so is everyone in agreement with that? Let's have a show of hands for staff. Okay, that's unanimous. Then we can move on to the next item.
So the next comment was, I'd like to take these somewhat together, some of these, but I'll take this one first. Request for smaller lot sizes or more area for housing, affordable housing was stated as an issue. And then we did want to just bring up a few ideas that we, since this came up such a high number of times, we felt it was important to at least open up the conversation. So we thought of some ideas here. Option one, we could review the conversion map that we've put together and is on the Monroe CDO website and review the total acreage amount in each zone. The Plan Commission could direct staff to increase any acreage in any of those districts. And we pointed out there was statements about the community development or high development zoning districts. Option two, Plan Commission could direct staff to review the use table permissions for different uses. Examples could include allowing detached accessory dwelling units in more zones, which would allow a second accessory home on a lot. Or option three, the Plan Commission could ask staff to reduce dimensional standards for any of the zoning districts. So we bring that to your attention. Or obviously there's an option which you can choose to move forward without taking action.
Mr. Morris?
I definitely get what the requester is saying here, but I think this is a topic we've discussed numerous times over the past few years, and the requesters may not realize that since it was in numerous meetings over numerous years, but my vote would be to leave it as we have it today, or leave it as we have it proposed.
So
We are not the city, and the city should be providing dense housing. They have the infrastructure. They, and we don't. They have, we have issues with karst and with floodways that they don't. But the city has obviously chosen to build a lot of housing that is definitely, although not, it's never stated, but it is definitely geared toward a student population based on how the rooms are set up for rent, et cetera. They're not affordable for a family, and I don't know why the heat is on us to provide housing when we're not set up to do that. We do not have the infrastructure to do that. I think there are some places where denser housing can be had. I think there are places where it should never be. And I think there are places that are going to evolve. But I will also say that I think we, and I've said this before, we need to look into some of these pocket type environments where we can create neighborhoods of tiny homes and things like that that are going to be affordable, because land is too expensive to be affordable for housing. And that's the issue. And we can't change that. I wish we could, but we can't. But we have to be more creative than just putting in very high density housing that really we can't support with our infrastructure, the natural infrastructure and the built infrastructure. But that's just my take on it. Let's leave it as it is and address things as they come up.
Colonel Ferris?
This is a very complicated topic.
Yes.
You could spend hours, days talking about this. I support status quo.
Yeah, I have something as well.
Yes, Ms. Owens?
It's fine.
I talked to a real estate agent. I asked them what the going rate is for building a house, and they said about $200 a square foot. So if you're looking at 1,000 square foot house, which would be very small, in fact, that's the size limit, I believe, on our dadus, you're looking at $200,000. Define affordable. By the time you add land, et cetera, to that, that's not something really that uh, uh, that we can deal with. Affordable is very, very difficult to come up with, and perhaps looking in the future at, I think an idea is expanding zones that can have detached accessory dwelling units on them makes some sense. But I think right now it's okay as is.
Okay, Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yeah, I guess to Dee's question, does that cost incorporate the land being sold or just strictly construction material?
Only the construction.
Okay, thank you. Jeez. Well, I'll make one comment. I mean, I've looked at certain homes at what seems to be kind of the base price here, and I feel like I have a pretty decent job with a pretty decent salary, and it becomes 52 to 53% of my income. So this is a big issue. I agree with some of the comments that have been made. I guess the real thing, in my opinion, is again, finding that middle ground, finding those appropriate places, and zoning them accordingly so we do have that predictability in our ordinance as far as if someone would like to come and build smaller homes on smaller lots and such. And without doing that, it's going to have to go through a process, and we can't predict the outcome of that process. So that's kind of my thoughts on this. I'm not going to, I agree with Mr. Ferris that this is super complex, super nuances, and we could spend days and days and days on it. But also, I don't think we found that middle ground to actually provide those abilities to do that where it's deemed appropriate.
Thank you. Commissioner Githens?
I'm in favor of maintaining what staff has proposed here, and I think that I'm a little disappointed, I guess, in some of the requests that have come in, changing some of the zoning from 0.22 acres to 0.20 ignores the fact that you have to have roadways in there. It doesn't really give you what they seem to be looking for. These are the lot sizes, not the lot size plus the road, and not the lot size plus other easements and things like that. So I appreciate what the staff has done.
Right, I appreciate it, and I'm in favor of keeping the status quo. And I just want to say one quick item, with regard to that large apartment complex that we had approved several years ago based on the idea that it would be workforce housing. We heard last night that it's primarily going to be student housing.
We don't know that.
But they said their applicants were from.
No, they said they had interest from, but they haven't shopped it on the
Okay.
market. We don't
Okay.
know. We don't know.
Well, anyway, you heard though.
I did.
Okay, so I just want to say that, and so I'm in favor of keeping the status quo because the market prices may come down, especially if we, I think that people are, if we provide clarity that we're not going to just allow density everywhere, maybe the prices on the lots will come down.
So is there a vote for no action on
Did you have something
on that
else?
one?
No. Mr. Morris?
Oh, that was my vote for no
Oh, yeah,
action.
yeah, we're voting. Okay. Okay, everybody, so that's good. And so the next item on the
Is that
agenda?
D also? Raise your hand.
Wasn't everybody, but again, I stated my piece.
Okay, great, thanks.
The next item is related. We received a addendum to, this was also included in the white paper, but there was a request, I think that Commissioner Githens alluded to, there was a request to review some of the lot sizes for the two zoning districts that we have, which is low development. The current lot size requirement for low development is 0.34, And they were asking if we would consider changing that to 0.33 to be divisible by, closely divisible by 1. And then community development, we have a current requirement of a lot size of 0.21, and there was a question about changing that to 0.2, also to be divisible by 1.
So, Mr. Morris?
I guess I don't have a strong preference one way or another, but I think divisible by an acre is arbitrary because I'm not sure how many lots are actually 1.00 acres versus 1.05 acres, and it would still be divisible, with a couple hundredths of an acre left over. So I could go either way. I guess I would probably vote to keep it the same because I don't see the value in changing it.
Yes, Commissioner Thomas.
If you would put that graph that they gave us back up on the screen, there isn't a parcel that looks like this that's divided this way, to Commissioner Githen's point. There's nothing on here. This is a blank slate. Well, how would anybody get out? How would anybody move from a roadway?
Right.
If you take a lot, you still have to account for all of the other things like detention basins and roadways and infrastructure and existing power lines and all the other things that are naturally occurring and built infrastructure, and you have to accommodate for it. So this is not, I say, keep it as it is.
Colonel Paris?
Education. Who came up with these numbers in the first place? Those folks have been doing this for decades. Does anybody know? I asked Jackie before the meeting. Who came up with these lot sizes in the very beginning? I mean, some great mind within Monroe County came.
Wasn't my great mind.
I was wondering if Mr. Schilling had some historical memory for this, because I looked in the 1986 ordinance. I did not see minimum lot sizes that are relevant to today's zoning.
And I also support leaving them alone.
Yeah.
Good question.
Those figures just were produced by staff and the planning commission through discussion at that time.
I remember watching some of those meetings, and they were long. Sometimes when I read the current ordinance, I can literally hear their voices speak. I do have a comment, I guess. Geez, we're good. These are pretty important, so, sorry if I kind of sound spacey, because I'm really trying to think through these, and it's easy to lose my train of thought. This is to some of the discussion. I think there are certain other ordinances that overlap that are very important to understand. We're talking about the highway ordinance, the stormwater ordinance, and the drainage ordinance. All of those things have to be met and complied with as well. So with those infrastructure discussion items and things, if they don't meet those, then it's not permitted and they can't do it. So again, we need to look at those contexts all together and understand if we don't provide the opportunity where it is appropriate and they can put in all the other needed infrastructure because they have to follow those same ordinances and be compliant, then they can do it. And if they can't, then they can't. So there's already other things out there that prevent these kind of more larger concerns. And I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. So those in favor of keeping it the way it is D. Owens? Okay, she's raised her hand. So you're abstaining? Or voting no? I don't know if it's abstaining or voting no. There's a difference.
It's too nuanced for me to make a blanketed decision on this. I think there's appropriateness in areas, and I think it's fine as is in certain other areas. So it's just too big of a question. So we can move forward.
Well, then that's an abstention.
Well, we're not officially voting. These are kind of more indicators for planning to make
just asked a simple
revisions.
question.
Well, no. I mean, it's an indicator for planning. This is exactly the process we're going for to make changes. And when that comes forward, we'll be addressing that, and that's when it will be a vote.
We'll move forward to the next item. Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. we're listening to you and,
no, I appreciate
and
that.
all of that. So please consider us in terms of the respect for our time and the ultimate weight that you would like to give the deliberation that you inject into the process. So thank you. Okay, Ms. Nestor Jelen?
So the next comment, we marked it as a medium, so we heard this a few times. There was a representation from a lot of the folks that were concerned about agricultural uses under the CDO. So there was a stated concern specifically to the agricultural residential zone that the impervious cover was too stringent. I will note that under the CDO.com, MonroeCDO.com website, we do have a Q&A by staff. There was a misunderstanding. Agricultural buildings are currently exempt under the draft CDO from the impervious cover, but there is some clarification I wanted to make that is before the Plan Commission. So we currently have a definition for lot coverage, building lot coverage, and we're moving towards impervious cover. So the change will include now counting driveways and other impervious cover. So that could be driveways, turnaround areas, patios, porches, homes, accessory structures, all into a calculation for impervious cover, which we do not currently have countywide. There's an exclusion for agricultural buildings, as we stated. So currently in the ordinance, we have 15,000 square feet of building coverage as the maximum. Other zones are percent open space required. Under the agricultural residential CDO draft, the latest draft shows a 20% of lot size or 20,000 square feet, whichever is less. Or if it's in a critical watershed, it's 10% of the lot size or 15,000 square feet. We came up with these square footages by multiplying the percent by the minimum lot size for the zone and came up with an even number. So the question for staff, or the question before the before you all, we have two images, image 2 and image 3, that we'd like to bring to your attention. So lot coverage is currently, this is the way it's currently listed under the agricultural zones, excluding agricultural buildings. And then under the CDO, maximum impervious cover, and we have that defined as well. So it will include, impervious surfaces shall include without limitation rooftops, gravel areas, pervious pavers. We've talked to the stormwater department. These actually do count as impervious, even though they are pervious pavers by the stormwater ordinance. So we wanted to be consistent. Asphalt or concrete paved areas, private access roads, etc. So the question that we have for the Plan Commission is, do you think that the ag CDO draft impervious cover is too stringent? Would you like us to review this, or do you feel like it's on the right track?
Commissioner Thomas. And then
Go ahead, Dee.
Yeah, go ahead, Dee.
Thank you. I have a question. Did you say that it was the stormwater is the reason that gravel counts as impervious? Because the whole reason I thought to have gravel is so that you don't have impervious.
Yes, so compacted gravel over time. I was educated on this topic by one of our prior drainage engineers on staff, but it actually counts as, I believe the rate at which water flows through is there's like a 0.9 threshold, and asphalt is considered 1. So it becomes so compacted, the soil becomes so compacted that water does have such a difficult time traveling through that it's considered impervious by their ordinance. But I'll also note that some people use like river rock or gravel as more of a landscape application or more of a stormwater application to slow down water that's going through their property. If it's not compacted, it would not be considered the same.
Okay.
But we generally have it as, yes, as gravel is
Commissioner Thomas?
I think that's kind of like the deck thing, because some people have solid decks and some people have decks that have lots of slats in it that, and you just say decks because you don't want to have to go through and explain what it has to look like. I don't think this is too stringent as it's written for the proposed CDO because it excludes ag buildings. Because if there's a shelter, a barn, a stable, all of that is excluded from this. And I think it's probably a misunderstanding as to why there's a thought. But I would ask anyone who has farmland to show us, what is if you take out the ag buildings, are you struggling to meet this? Because I don't see it. We can always amend it later. But I think this is plenty generous, especially with the ag buildings.
Is there a request along with that to review it in 1 year? Is there a mechanism for this process? Like, let's say we pass it in the CDO. When do we want to set a mechanism to review it later or not?
I have a list going of later amendments, so I could put it on the list for review. If we receive an uptick in the number of variances, it's going to become very evident that there's a problem. But we have to set the threshold correct, because if we set it so high and there's no variance petition ever provided, and there's still stormwater issues between neighbors, we're not solving anything. So it is going to cause some level of variances, but we have to get the number correct to really try to fit the county context, try to avoid egregious situations. So,
yeah. Well, great. Mr. Morris had a comment.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting to my comment. That is, I don't feel like I have enough information here to make a decision, because I don't know, by making this change, how many people are impacted or how many non-conforming lots we now have. So I'm just not sure if, we have a lot of people that are right on the border of putting a little bit more gravel in their driveway and not being in compliance. So I don't feel like I can make a decision on this today.
This might be a good grad student project to have them look at a few farms and do the measurements,
Yeah, we can definitely do that. We did do this exercise. Planning staff helped me. They're all wonderfully skilled in doing this pretty quickly. We took 10 random properties in each of the non-residential zones, and we were able to look at what properties would essentially have passed and what wouldn't have passed. To give you just an idea, Walmart would have needed a variance, the BMV would have needed a variance, but almost all others were compliant. The issue becomes when the lot size is so small and they're zoned for business. I think both stormwater and planning are going to have to figure out what the best way forward is, whether that's variances or whether that's exceptions. Those will get covered, because we do have whichever is less. So let's say happens to be an ag property that's only 1 acre. That would only be, give or take 9,000 square feet of impervious that they would be able to do, because it's 20% of the lot size, or 20,000 square feet, whichever is less. And that's, I think, what the hiccup is dependent on the lot size, it could mean that you have less impervious cover.
Right.
That's good work. That's good analysis.
So we can certainly do more research. If that's the majority of the group would like us to come back with this question, we can do that.
Did we want to act on this and then follow up, or do we want to just follow up on this further?
I think we leave it as it is now, and then follow up later with more information.
And thanks for the good research you did on the issues that concerned us.
Dee's a yes as well.
Dee's hand was up.
Oh, yes, Dee's hand is up. Okay.
All right.
Madam
On
Vice
to the next
President,
page.
it's 3:33. Were we?
We have 15 minutes, well,
It's
12
close to
minutes.
3:45. I have to get out at 3:45 because of my meter. So do we have time to do one more?
Yes.
Let's see. Yes, I think so. Yes. The next question came up a few times during the hearing, which was there was a general concern for larger setbacks. And I summarized this several ways, since there was a different avenues for which people were concerned about setbacks. So some were concerned because of utility installation, longer lines of utilities. Some were concerned about the calculation of buildable area excluding that right-of-way or setback. And then some specifically brought up the general business zoning district from the current code to the new code. And when I was rereading some of the transcript from the meeting minutes, I believe there was a request to possibly make the maximum front setback no more than 35 feet, no matter the road classification. So I'd be happy to pull up what the change. Sorry, what did you say, Dee? She may.
Sorry.
No, she wasn't on mute.
I didn't say anything at all. I heard that. I don't know what it was.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that was me. I was yelling at my dog. Sorry.
Thanks, David.
Okay, so I did reach out to our highway engineer because I felt like the highway department would have a good sense of front setback standards. And I did leave a quote in there from our highway engineer. And I wanted to also note that our GB district setbacks are pretty consistent from the current ordinance to the draft. I think what changed in some of the iterations was we attempted to go through all of these zones and make the front setback from the center line. That was a request that we had heard a long time ago. People don't know where the right of way is. Could we not use something that everyone is familiar with, the center line of the road? We took this in front of our legal department. We work with them twice a week for at least 2 hours each time. And they are very helpful in guiding us in the best possible direction based on some of the context and history of what's going on in the county. And so they brought up a point that we cannot have setbacks from the center line because if the roadway is improved and someone's home becomes closer to the roadway, that's just a different beast than if you just were to buy that right of way and say, no, you have to put structures away from the right of way because that right of way has been extended. So we did attempt to do that. And so that might have been the confusion by the public to say we were increasing it. We actually just changed it to be from the right of way rather than from the center line. But I do have 2 images as well, 4 and 5 in here. So here's GB. And here's the current setbacks under the different road classifications: minor, major, collector, minor arterial, principal arterial, so 25, 25, 35, and 50. And then you go to the CDO and you'll see that these are exactly the same, except we added one for interstate. So in speaking with the highway engineer, I asked, do we already have right-of-way for all of these roads? Is it really necessary to have a larger right-of-way for, say, a major arterial versus a major collector? Could we change 50 to 35? And their impression was we actually don't always have right-of-way through these areas. So it would be necessary to keep those setbacks the way they are.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
Thank you. I think you did a great job. I'm going to, I think, maybe try to summarize what you're saying, and then you could tell me if I'm right or wrong. So you want to keep the setbacks pretty consistent because if we ever do get any more dedication for right-of-way, they won't be encroaching within those setbacks. Is that kind of one point you were bringing up?
Right.
Okay.
For
and
road
then,
improvements.
And then the other one is we're keeping everything pretty much the same. So this isn't going to put a lot of already existing lots in a pre-existing non-conforming. So as long as we stay pretty consistent, we won't have to deal with someone that did build a accessory or their home, and now we're increasing the setbacks. And if they want to do something, there's a larger impact on that property, like if they can or if they have to do something with their home or the accessory. And that's pretty straightforward or accurate, right?
So in one of the earlier versions of the CDO, you'll see a footnote below each two-pager describing some of the difficulties in consolidating the zoning districts. So right now I'm using the example of GB. I will answer that yes, those are staying absolutely consistent with the current. But under the consolidation of the zoning districts for residential, there are some instances between the two zones, let's say suburban residential and estate residential, that we're combining into one new zone, which is residential 1. Suburban and estate residential both had a 1 acre minimum lot size, but they had slightly different side setbacks. So let's say suburban residential had a 5-foot side setback and estate residential had a 15-foot side setback. We may have taken the average of the two and made it 10. So we may still see some nonconformities, but that's just in trying to deal with some of the consolidation that we've done and trying to clean up some of the things that we see are duplicative.
Thank you for expanding on that question. I guess my real question now is if someone finds them in a situation where they're pre-existing non-conforming with the side setbacks, and let's say they built their home there, and they wanted to maybe put a porch on the backyard, there is the variance process they can go through, correct?
There's going to be a variance process. There's also going to be the section on nonconformities. And I believe if it's just a dwelling that's nonconforming, such as it's in a setback, there's an allowance to expand it by a certain percent, and that will still be in there.
And that will be something that could be administratively done?
That would be administratively done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I think the question specifically before you under the text is related to GB. I think that's mostly what I gathered from the comment. So is there anyone that wishes staff to revise the GB proposed CDOs?
Leave it as is.
I say leave it as it is and don't make the changes.
Okay.
All
right.
D?
Leave the section, okay. I hope we can think of ways to move this along a little faster because we're not going to finish next week if we don't. So I just encourage everyone to go through this, make notes, think about the easy answers on some of these. Some of these don't require a lot of discussion.
Exactly.
Some of them do, and I want to make sure that we get to it, so.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
all.
everyone. Thanks,
And
Jeff.
if you want to, do you want a spreadsheet of this one as well?
Yes.
Okay, all right,
Please.
then you can sort them by certain ways. All right, we will send spreadsheets out. I will say we're going to keep using the same packet generally for the administrative sessions, but we're going to do addendums, and that will be in the same SharePoint
Perfect.
folder.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That makes a ton of, thank you for all of this coordination. You all are amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Wonderful.
So, thank you. Thanks, Dee.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you. And when do we see each other again? I'll miss you. Everyone.
Next meeting is Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday in the afternoon or?
It's Tuesday starting at 1:30.
Okay, well, I can't wait till then. Let's just try to move it along, though. We really appreciate everybody's good thoughts. We don't want to curtail those, but we do want to move it along and get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great weekend.